My name is Lennard, or aka LescArt. I am from the north of Germany. I'm doing 3D for like 15 years now. 6 years in the industry, always doing side projects and but super passionate about 3D. A super big surprise for me to win. In the beginning, I was really unsure if I actually can participate this time because I had a lot of work to do, not much time to work on it. I wanted to participate really badly because I took part in two of the earlier challenges, and it's always a lot of fun. And it's also always a little bit of a, well, the name says it, a little bit of a challenge. I wanted to do something with crowds, and because I never touched on that topic really, I saw a good opportunity because the template was actually very fitting for something like a big city siege, like looking down the walls and seeing the big army. Obviously hugely inspired by the Lord of the Rings, because as a teenager I religiously watched the making of the Lord of the Rings. Literally every evening I watched it as a series, basically. I thought I would go with something like the Lord of the Rings, looking down on a big army that is about to attack the city. And also I wanted to create the vibe of basically like there's no escape anymore, you can't leave the city anymore. And recently I randomly watched Kingdom of Heaven. I liked some of the big crowd attacks from that movie, so I pushed my my project a little bit more into the Mediterranean environment. I thought a lot of references from cities like Jerusalem and also some Spanish cities. So my workflow is mainly revolving around Houdini and 3ds Max for the 3D part. Environments mostly in 3ds Max, because 3ds Max is the software I'm using for 15 years and I'm just like really comfortable in it. I started with blocking out my scene. I put a very basic satellite image on the ground basically to just have something there, but in the end I kind of stuck with it and refined it a bit. I also had to block out the big armies. That was obviously super important because it literally takes half the frame. In my workflow I also like to get into the comp part right away. So these pictures are actually from Nuke, so it's my evolving comp basically on the side of the evolving 3D scene. For me it just makes like most sense to keep working on the 3D and the comp simultaneously. I started refining the environment, and that's mostly like the houses and everything is mostly kit bash. No time to model everything on the time limit, on the time budget that the challenges bring with it. I built a master shader basically for all the walls and for the roofs and for the pavement and stuff like that, which I could quickly slap on everything, and it's procedural shader with dirt and everything, and it's triplanar mapped. So literally none of this has new UVs. Some kit bash models have UVs, but they really don't need them. Keep refining, bring in some variation on the colors and everything per house, per roof or something like that, and start adding some vegetation. And then, as you can see here, I finally refined the satellite imagery. I added some little path ways here, and also projected some roads into the ground on the inside of the walls, which is, I just rendered the top view basically once I was happy with the building layout, and then I went into Photoshop and just laid out some different stock images of dirt roads. And the same I did for the house roofs actually, because I took some stock images of roofs and just to have a little bit more natural breakup and use some image textures, because it's always getting you very nice details. For the ground outside the walls, as you can see here, that's the satellite image, and then I extracted some masks just by pulling some color keys and used them for different scatterings with Forest Pack in 3ds Max. Like here I used the mask, that's very early version because yes, very rasterized, and that shouldn't be like that, but some rocks, and I think this is one of the mostly final versions. Yeah, where I scattered some rocks and some bushes here just to give it a little bit of three-dimensionality, and also I put in those tire tracks from weak 2 was already finished, so I really had to get into crowd simulations, and I did that in Houdini. Since I never had done crowd simulations before, I just had to start out with like very basic things like this, just keep a chunk of crowd walking and then trigger them into running and stuff like that. And then it got more complex over time. So I have things like this. I gave them some flags, which you can't see in the end because it's super tiny. And also then transition for the dying soldiers. Once I was happy with how the crowd is behaving, I could apply it procedurally to much bigger chunks basically and get this huge attacking crowd. Archers on the walls were a little bit more complicated. They are basically walking along the wall, and then if they are getting too close, if they are getting close to the front edge, they start turning to the front and start aiming and shooting. And after a while, I imagine when they have no arrows left anymore, then they will like back off from the front edge and go walking again, basically, probably refilling the arrows. That was the thought process. I didn't really do the arrows because I knew you definitely can't see that at all, but the dying is basically a random trigger for the agents that are getting too close to the wall. Then they will switch the state into the ragdoll state. And then the good thing is, since I was already finished with most of the environment, I could also already send this to render on my own PC, because that was early enough that I could render it on my own PC while I was working on the crowds. But then once I was finished with the crowds, I realized that there's no chance I can get this out in time. And or at least if I would render it on my home PC, then basically I have like 1 day to finish the entire foreground. That's the moment when I looked into FoxRenderfarm for the first time. Since we got some free coupon credits for FoxRenderfarm with the challenge, I thought, okay, I give it a try. I had only like used once another render farm before, and it was really not the greatest experience because it was very work intensive to get everything running and everything working correctly on the farm, with dependencies and missing textures and missing caches and stuff like that. And yeah, and then so I was a little bit hesitant, but then I tested Fox and it just worked right away, and I was really confused but very happy about it. And from then on, I knew basically that I can just throw everything I still have left to render. So everything except the main background environment, the static environment. I can just throw everything on Fox. It brings me time. First of all, I get finished with rendering. I knew that I could like basically work on the foreground until the very last moment and then just send it to FoxRenderfarm and get it still out. And that's what I did. And then, so then the last week came. So I spent 1 week on crowds alone because I never did crowds before, and there was a lot of learning involved as well, but also, yeah, just a lot of setup time. And then I had 1 week left for the foreground. I started blogging in the foreground. I had a pretty clear idea of what I want to do for the foreground. I wanted to have some guards, some soldiers in the foreground who are watching the battle. Battle has not yet come to them, but they probably have to fight as well. I started with blocking it out, refined everything. I built the wall. Basically, that's all different like stone models from mega scans and stuff like that. And I built it according to references from Spanish castles. Noticed all these little shrubs in the cracks and crevices, and I put them in as well. Some of them hand placed, some of them scattered with forest back again. And then also this little elevated platform for the leader of the pack. And he obviously, maybe he doesn't take it as serious as he should, because he has his whole little snack bar there and a comfy chair to watch the spectacle. After I was finished and happy with the foreground 3D part, I sent again the foreground to Fox and started on the compositing in Nuke. It's basically all the elements I rendered. This is the final image, but I re-rendered background environment as well outside of the walls because I changed some things, so this came additionally. And then the crowd, I also did some volumetric sims for the dust kick-up of all the soldiers. And I rendered it in 2 parts because this is the background part. So I rendered it in 2 parts just to have a little bit less RAM consumption and to not have to re-render everything if I want to change something on the background, because I wasn't quite sure if I want to do that. And then foreground, obviously, some of the crowds on the walls, some more crowds on the walls, and some down in the streets of the city, and then some dust, some smoke simulations from burning buildings and stuff like that, and trebuchet shots, and the smoke pass, fog pass. So that's basically all the render elements I had, all the single renders. And then I started comping them. And one cool technique I used for getting the nice God rays was I took a position pass, and a position pass is basically XYZ coordinates of the 3D scene stored in RGB values. With the position pass, there's this cool node in Nuke where you can select the position pass, and then you can basically put a noise, a 3D noise on the position pass, and it just sticks with the geometry in the scene, basically a static noise. Now you can use this more or less to just overlay it on your render and get some really noise breakup shadows, like cloud shadows basically. So this is after, this is before. It looks a little bit too strong, but in the end it's like balanced out again if all the fog and God rays are coming on top of it. Now the cool thing is you can use the same noise basically to feed it into so this is the final noise breakup, and you can feed it into a God rays node in Nuke, the center being very far off screen, and multiply that with a little bit of 2D cards with noises on it to break it up a little bit, and then add this on top, and voila, you have God rays completely done in comp, including the cloud shadows. So this is before, this is after. Obviously also adding in between, added this the smoke passes. I pre-comped some of this and then added the foreground as well, and then just did some basic camera lens treatment effects and stuff like that, and some color grading, and then this is the final image. Yeah, was quite happy with the outcome, but nevertheless didn't expect to win the challenge, so super grateful for that. In the end, it got really, really close. In the beginning, I didn't really think I would be able to finish it in time anyway, but I just wanted to try. And then around 2.5 weeks in, maybe, I realized that, oh, I actually can maybe finish it, but I have to be very, very speedy. On the last day or something like that, I did a 20-hour work shift non-stop and delivered it in like 12 minutes before the deadline, I think. So it was super, super close. But I'm very, very happy, obviously, that it still worked out. So when I put my render elements on FoxRenderfarm, it basically rendered always in a couple hours. I could be sure that I just throw it on there, and then in a couple hours I will be ready. And also gives you a priority for like 3 frames in the middle, beginning and end. And so I always put on some important frames as well first, and then already could start using those frames, use them in the comp, and get started on the comp process on specific frames. While it's rendering on FoxRenderfarms, it just downloads each frame after it's done. So that's very, very handy to just keep updating your work while you're going and while it's still rendering. So it's basically similar than just rendering on your own PC, which is super comfortable. I knew that I had to render with Houdini, and I had also to render 3ds Max scenes. So I just downloaded the desktop client of FoxRenderfarms, and then I could just drag and drop them in there, and it worked right away. It was super cool, and yeah, I didn't expect that. And now I'm also eager to install the submission plugins and try it that way. The cloud render service actually works like any other local render farm. I was used to using render farms when I worked at Scanline, and pretty similar to Deadline actually. I felt right at home, and you can submit jobs, you can suspend jobs, you can suspend certain frames, you can resubmit certain frames if there was an error or something like that, or some frame was not loading a cache correctly, which happened like once in probably 2,000 frames I rendered there. It's not charging as well, which is also very good. And also FoxRenderfarm gives you a preview while a job is still rendering. So on the one hand, it's downloading the frames anyway, right when they are finished, but you also have this little preview window on the left, which shows you exactly what's his status. And you can even see like where the buckets are currently moving. And that's really cool just to check and have everything under control and see right where everything is currently.